Well, hello, friends. Here we are on a what was supposed to be just a Thursday night with the Ducks. Cammy and Mike would do after, but there's so much more. Oh my goodness! A late scratch of Andrei Kuzmenko, a deletion of Jacob Pelche after 20 minutes. Morgan Frost getting sat down, which may or may not have something to do with an injury. And finally, something that looks like a trade starting to emerge involving the Calgary Flames, the Philadelphia Flyers, potentially even a third team. Thank you for being with us. There's Mike Gould. My name is Ryan Pinder. We've got Yasmin, Jack, Cammy, the whole crew. We'll have an afterburner following tonight's game, but this is the trade hangout. So come chill with us. Mike, what do we know and what is there still to figure out here as the Flames and Flyers likely to consummate a deal tonight?
Well, what we know so far is that Andrei Kuzmenko, which is what we heard about first, is on his way to the Philadelphia Flyers. And Kuzmenko is in the last year of the 2-year deal that he signed with Vancouver prior to the trade for Elias Lindholm. He's making $5.5 a year. And of course, we know that it hasn't really gone his way for a lot of this season. Last couple of weeks, I would say he's been playing like a guy who wants to be traded in some fashion, and it appears that is the case. Jacob Pelche is the one that sort of surprised some people right off the hop. We thought it might just be Kuzmenko for a pick, but it's Jacob Pelche involved in this one too. He's on a 1-year, 2-way deal that he signed with the Flames sort of just on the eve of training camp, and that's a deal that carries an $800,000 NHL cap hit. People were sort of wondering, what's Pelche's future going to look like? Are they going to re-sign him? Is he a player who they see as a piece going forward? And I think that could have been in the cards, but with an opportunity to acquire the two players who seem to be coming this way, the Flames took that opportunity to maybe cash in on a player who cleared waivers earlier this season. And then as for the pieces that are coming to Calgary, the big one that people have been talking about for a while is Morgan Frost, who's a young center. He's not a right-handed center, but he is a young center who, fits the bill of what Craig Conroy has been talking about, what he's been looking for. Frost is a pending RFA at the end of this season. He's making just a little over $2 million this year. The other big piece who kind of came out of the blue is Joel Farabee. And this is a player who scored 50 points last season, has scored 20 goals twice in his career. He is signed for a while, 4 more seasons at $5 million per year. So this is a piece who is signed for a long haul and a piece who I think the Flames are intending to maybe be part of their young retooling core.
Yeah, and chatting with some people around the league, Farabee was phenomenal at the Worlds. People really liked him there and can play with top talent. Frost will see what the offensive ceiling is at this point. He hasn't been able to prove he's a top 2 center in this league. Still young, left shot. The offense just hasn't really been there to sort of justify top 2C, hence him, A, being available, and 2, making just over $2 million. But Farabee, the more known and proven offensive commodity, not a center, a left shot guy, both around 6 feet, 180, neither huge. And apparently neither are Torts players anymore, which for those watching the Flyers closer than us makes sense, fits the bill. There's Farabee's card from Hockey DB. You can see just 8 goals this season through 50 games, that after 22 last year, a career high. He did score 20 in the shortened 2021 season. This is the player that I think would probably have most fans excited. No, he's not the center, but he's the guy that, can play with skill, score, and he's the closer to the elite and rarer asset, in my opinion.
Yeah, these are consecutive first-round picks from the Flyers. They made 2 first-round picks in both the 2017 and 18 drafts. 17 was the big year where they won the lottery, and they ended up picking Nolan Patrick at number 2 overall. That didn't really work out due to a host of factors. Like you said, Pinder, Frost and Farabee are both guys who have had their stretches in the doghouse under John Tortorella. This is a really interesting deal. It's a deal that has been sort of it sort of fits the mold again of what we've sort of expected to see from Calgary. It does feel like there might be more coming from Calgary. It does feel like there might be the opportunity for a third team to get involved here with a lot of cap coming from Calgary in the form of Kuzmenko. But at the same time, Farabee also makes 5. So it's going to be really interesting. But if there is another piece coming from Calgary, which I suspect might be the case, I could see there being a broker involved as well.
Well, and then if there's a broker, then picks are involved. We'll see. This is not the firm and final deal.
No.
This is just where it's at right now, and we'll continue to update you. Who wants to yell me the score over there? Cammy, how are we doing in the Ducks Flames game?
Still
2-1, 14 minutes left. All right. So Pelche is an interesting one. This is a player that I think in the last month, fans have been very excited to see start to, I guess, affect games and look like a contributor on an NHL club. That's exciting for a fan base, but it's also a guy that was so ineffective he couldn't make the team out of camp and had to go back to the American League and really work on his craft to come back to be that guy. Is this a nice sell high moment for Craig Connor, or had he just figured it out? We'll be able to look back and see, but it is ironic. They could have lost him for nothing in October, and now he's part of a deal that returns two established NHL forward commodities.
Yeah, it's a really interesting deal. I think from a standpoint of what Tortorella likes for his team, I think Pelche might end up making more sense than the two guys who the Flyers gave away, because I think the issues that Tortorella has had with those two are sort of around sort of work ethic type things, just like consistency. And with Pelche, sure, there's been consistency problems, but he just sort of fits in the mold of what I think of a little bit more as a Tortorella type bottom nine player, of sort of if you're really happy, maybe he turns into a Carl Hagelin type. And that's a guy who sort of found his footing in the NHL under Tortorella. But it's a really fascinating deal where the Flames seem to be capitalizing or attempting to capitalize on a couple players who predate this regime. In a way, it kind of reminds me of when they traded for Hanifin and Lindholm. Now, I don't see those players. These players are not as highly touted in terms of their draft pedigree. They're both first-round picks, but both those guys were number 5 overall picks, and they were both younger. But it does feel like Calgary trying to sort of get a 2-in-1 type thing where they're managing to buy low on two guys and hoping one of them maybe turns into the piece they really want.
Yeah, skilled but not heavy is sort of the Frost card from talking to some scouts. So can he find a way to have success at center ice? It wasn't going to happen under Torts, apparently. And I guess what's funny is the last guy to talk about, we haven't talked about Kuzmenko at all. This was a guy that when we chatted in the offseason, it would be like, oh, yeah, this is going to be their biggest trade chip. He's an expiring asset. He scored a goal every other game down the stretch with the Flames. Outside of this one little run with Rick Tocchet, he's a 40-goal guy or close to it. 39 as a rookie. I think it was 14 goals in 29 games with the Flames after the trade. It just hasn't transpired at all. And there has been some more inspired play the last few weeks. But I don't get the sense that anyone's going to be wringing their hands over the loss of Kuzmenko, a pending UFA, a guy that was a regular in the press box at Junctures earlier this year. And if John Tortorella had some issues with John Farabee and Matvei Mishkov and Frost and others, let's be rolling on those Flyers media avails with Kuzmenko if it is a Flyer where he finishes up.
It's really interesting, and we're seeing now some additional reports. Tony Andrakaitis from Inside AHL Hockey, who is low-key a good source, saying there are also 2 draft picks going to the Flyers in this deal. LeBrun is saying something similar, that there are 2 picks there are a couple of draft picks involved. Don't know exactly if they're both going to Philly or if maybe one's going somewhere else.
Yeah, and so if this is a first rounder, that's a very steep price to add to this group. Clearly, if it's a third, is it a fourth? We'll see. But I mean, before we would say, "Hey, great work, Connie," or "What the hell's he doing?" These picks matter.
They very much so.
And the Flames do have 3 firsts this year. One of them is go to Montreal, whether that's Florida's or Calgary's, depending where they finish. New Jersey's is here from the Jacob Markstrom deal. Next year, they have 2 firsts. They have Vegas's in their own, and they do have a couple seconds as well this year. And I think 2 thirds next year. So if you shed 1 of a second and a third this year or next year, okay, that I don't know. We'll see. This deal's not done. We don't know all the pieces yet, but picks involved is the latest.
Just to clarify something that I said earlier. So Farabee, number 14 overall pick in 2018. And then the previous year, it was Frost at number, a little bit later, if I remember, 27. So as I had sort of compared it to the Carolina deal where Calgary got 2 number 5 picks. This is a little bit different, but it is 2 guys who are coming in the same package who were very highly touted. Frost Frost is a guy who was a huge junior scorer with the Sioux Greyhounds.
Mhm.
There is some familiarity there, I believe, with Rory Cairns in his last year. Yeah,
Okay.
just a little bit. And then Frost, was a really big AHL scorer immediately after he came in. Not really big, but certainly a productive 29 points in his first 41 games as a 20-year-old with Lehigh Valley back in 2019-20. And again, we're talking about a guy who's had back-to-back 40-point seasons, who has 25 points in 49 games this season. On the surface, it is very Elias Lindholm-like.
Yeah, Lindholm had a career high of 17 goals before he showed up in Calgary and immediately was plopped on a top line with Monahan and Gaudreau, and then centered a top line that had Tkachuk on his right and Gaudreau on his left. The Flames got the best years of Elias Lindholm's career. I don't think we're going to debate that. But at 17 goals coming in, they think there's more to unlock. It's like, right, but there better be a lot more than 17. And it turned out there was. He scored 40 that one year and looked all the part of a top liner when he was with those two-star players. I don't know that it's the exact same, but if the Flames are expecting more offensively, that would probably be fair.
I'm very curious to see what Craig Conroy has to say about this deal. I mean, obviously it's not finished, but they are getting pieces that are, really impressive, I think. I mean, Frost and you got some?
Keep going. I'll just jump in when you're
done.
Sorry.
Frost and Farabee both a little bit older than Jacob Pelche. He was a 2019 pick. They're 2017, 2018, but they fit in sort of with that age category of guys. If you look at Sharon Govich as the oldest of that group, then you go down a little bit to Coronado and Zary, and these two are kind of right in between. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, they don't get older with this trade. They probably stay the same age because they lose a guy that's 29 in Kuzmenko, if I'm correct. And Pelche's only a year or two younger, and you bring in a 23 and 24, 25-year-old, if I'm correct. So, yeah, you lose a 23-year-old, you gain a 24, you gain a 25, and you say goodbye to the 29-year-old. You're probably a tad younger after this deal, but the known commodity part, you've got a lot more of. The way Andrei Kuzmenko was going, I wasn't sure he'd get an NHL deal next year. I think what we've seen lately changes that. But if he was going to continue to be healthy a lot, it was probably time to go back to Russia and make really good money and be a star rather than a fringy player here. We'll see what it looks like in Philly, and I wouldn't be surprised to put him with Mishkov. So, here this is a Philly perspective here as we continue to sift through the trade seeds here. This is Chris Bengal, who writes for CBS in Philly. Definitely not shocked that Morgan Frost is being moved. Such was never going to excel in Torts' system. Farabee has had an up and down tenure in Philly, but I'm a tad surprised to see he's headed to Calgary. Interesting shakeup in Philly, to say the least. And they do have a lot of intriguing forwards. It's not a team like the Flames that struggled to score mightily. And I think if you're looking at what Craig Conroy is trying to achieve here, if we do have something close to the full picture on the deal, his club can't score enough. They've got great goaltending. They've somehow found a way to defend very well despite not having the sexiest collection of blue liners. And I think structurally they're pretty sound. They work hard. They don't take a lot of nights off. Putting the puck in the net's been really hard. Farabee, 22 goals last year, immediately becomes one of their better scoring threats.
Yes, indeed.
And it pushes guys down the lineup. Like Pelche was playing top line minutes. Pospisil was playing top line minutes. I think you probably want to leave the Coronado, Backlund, and Coleman line together. But if you put Farabee with Kadri and Huberdeau, that starts to look a lot more like a real threat to score more than things have to go right.
Well, we talk about the way that the Flames have performed this year, and we talk about guys like Huberdeau having bounce back seasons and how things are progressing with their younger players like Coronado. And at the end of the day, it's still a team where nobody is really performing at a super high level offensively.
Right.
Nobody really is. I mean, Huberdeau's
Coronado's having a breakout year, but it's
it's
his first full season.
And he's got 12 goals.
Yeah. So
which is good.
If he hits 20, it'd be like, wow, what a great first full season.
But ultimately you're looking at this as being a deal that gives the Flames different looks at forward, which is something that I think they need because the combinations that they've had have been okay at best, I would say. And that's the way that I would describe it. You're still looking at guys like Sharon Govich and Backlund and Pospisil, and I mean, you're looking at these guys being on pace for less than 40 points. I mean, there's a lot of guys who could use a bit of a boost. I mean, you even look at a guy like Morgan Frost, who has 25 points this year, and we talk about him being a buy low candidate for the Flames. He'd be tied for the 4th on the Flames in points right now. He's tied with Mackenzie Weegar. He's ahead of, I guess now Coronado's tied with him as well. He's also at 25 points after scoring his goal tonight. But you look at this team, a guy like Rasmus Andersson, who is arguably their number 1 offensive defenseman, below him, Sharon Govich below him, Pospisil, of course. It's a team where they needed a change-up at forward, and they needed these young pieces. And you're not going to find a whole lot of young pieces, especially one with term like Farabee, who is able to be moved just like this up in the middle of the season.
We are doing a live trade stream. Ryan Pinder alongside Mike Gould as we are in the Barn Burner Studios in Martel Loop. We will have Afterburner following the Flames and Ducks. Cammy update. Still 2-1. Cammy needs a water. I'm afraid she's going to be coughing tonight. Cammy, we start gargling oil and water. We need to soothe those vocal cords. All right. A reminder that, yes, this program and all of our programs brought to you by our great friends at Bet365. They're the world's largest sports betting platform. Open an account today with Bet365, and you can bet on a huge range of markets. I don't know if you can bet on what draft picks the Flames are moving, but pretty much everything else you could. Download the app today. You can use the code NATION when you sign up, whatever the moment. Never ordinary at Bet365. And if you do want to get your comments right to the front of the queue, we'll accept some super chats, won't we, Jack? Why not? Proceeds from our super chats go to the Youth Centers of Calgary, YCC. Great place for kids after school. Hang out, learn an instrument, play a sport, get a hot meal, whatever it is. Maybe it's just little downtime away from the stress of normal life. And when family gets home, where you go, just a little pit stop after school. Youth Centers of Calgary, great charity to support. Jack, you can start tagging some comments if you'd like, questions or reaction to this. Until we know what the picks are, it'd be really hard to say yay, nay, or give grades. Not that it's the prudent thing to do the night of a deal anyway, but I understand how this world works. For example, if it's 2 firsts going to Philly, I don't like this deal for Calgary. And on the flip side, if it's a 5th and a 4th going to Philly, yes, great. So what picks are involved do matter a lot. And so if people are waiting for the proverbial thumb up or down, we do need to know what picks, when, etc. Let's jump to our first super chat. It's a great point, and it's from Brad. A few bucks for the kids. That is what it's all about. Youth Centers of Calgary, $10 for the kids right there. Thank you, Bradley. Appreciate that. Arthas, you're in the mix as well. Thanks for this modified watch party, boys. Yeah, you know what's funny? We did this last year. Do you remember how the Hanifin trade broke?
Yes.
Painfully slowly.
I think I was coming back from the airport that night.
It was just like Hanifin's going to be traded, and then it was just like nothing. It was a walk
that took forever.
Through the Sahara Desert.
It was Miramanov that was the only piece that was announced coming back forever.
And everyone's just waiting.
And everybody's like, what?
Waiting.
And then there was
who's Miramanov?
Yeah, who is this guy?
Yeah. And we live streamed it, and Jack and I basically said we're not going off the air till this happens. And, Dean had taken a kid to the arena and then dropped him off, picked him back up, popped on a couple times. We had a bunch of people spin through and chat. But it turned out to be one of the biggest streams I think, Jack, we did all last year, because everyone was like, what's the deal? And it was the big pre-deadline hype. You recall the Hanifin stream, Jack? I feel like that was a more memorable evening.
We went for hours.
Yeah, it did go a long time.
But it was fun.
It's a non-Cur record for a longer show.
They weren't playing that night.
That is true.
It was a little bit different.
They didn't get punted for Afterburner, which we're probably going to do at some point here.
We got some questions coming in. You want to take some?
Yeah, let's fire. Yeah, thank you, Jack. Questions. So Morgan Frost is an RFA and makes 2.1. What will be the minimum offer? I believe the minimum offer is going to be 2.1. You have to make below a certain threshold to get a mandatory raise, and qualifying a guy. Yeah, I mean, it might be in the 5 or 10% raise category, but it's close to you don't need to give him a raise at all.
Hang on. No, that's the previous qualifying offer.
Yeah,
I believe
each year it has to do with average salary and the cap and all kinds of things.
I believe it's 2.4. Okay, I believe it's 1 year at 2.4.
So 2.4 would indicate it's basically a 50%.
Because that's his base salary this year.
Okay.
So
and that's fine. He plays center. Like, that's not an issue for me. What does Kevin Rooney make? Like,
1.3.
And he's a fifth center.
That's right. Maybe
honest.
a sixth.
So, yeah, where he slots in. I mean, Connor Zary is not back yet, but I like Connor Zary as a center, and I don't love Sharangovich at center. I think he does a passable job there. I like him a lot more on the wing.
Me too.
So I would think if he's here, okay. Apparently, Josh is saying what Frank's tweeted here.
Yeah, Frank's just tweeted it out. So it's to Calgary, Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost. To Philly, Pelche, Kuzmenko, a second and a seventh.
Okay.
That sounds a lot better to me than 2 first-round picks.
It sure does, and not as good as 2 fifths. But again, a 7th-round pick may as well just be a ham sandwich. It's incredibly not likely to be a player. Right. Not all 7th-rounders are Dustin Wolf's kids, or Wolves children, or I think you know what I mean.
Flames did not make a 7th-round pick last year.
I think they're fine with it.
That's
at that point. Frank's ready to join the feed, Jack. If you want to send him a link, he can jump on for a few minutes and jump in on this deal. If you hear that, Jack, send Frankie a link. He's got the deal.
Sounds
Again,
good.
Joel Farabee, left shot, 4 years old.
Yeah, turning 25 in February.
Morgan Frost, a centerman, 25, both now members of the Calgary Flames. The Calgary Flames send another first-rounder, Jacob Pelche, who I believe is 23.
Yeah.
To the Philadelphia Flyers alongside Andrei Kuzmenko, the 29-year-old UFA who is set to expire this summer, who has spent a bunch of time dancing between top lines, fourth lines, and press boxes. A 2nd-round pick to the Flyers as well. The Flames have 2 of those this year, and a 7th-round pick, which is one of the least valuable assets that you can move. A 7th-rounder. Again, not all 7th-rounders turn into Dustin Wolfs. In fact, almost none of them do. 3 first-round picks changing hands. That would be obviously Farabee, Frost, and Pelche, all selections in the first round. So when we get Frank, he'll jump on and join us to talk about this deal. We don't know what years the picks are in, but at this point, I don't really think it's that material. They have 2 seconds this year. I'm assuming the thing that Philly would want would be the pick this year, and it is not a notoriously great draft beyond some of the skill at the top. Jack, just confirming you're working on Frank right now.
Yeah, Frank's here whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Let's get him in right now. The man that broke the deal and our NHL insider from Daily Faceoff. Good evening, Franklin. How are you?
I'm good. Nice little deal for a Thursday. This came together quite nicely.
We handed off the afterburner duties to Cammie and Mike and thought we'd just have a night off. And the Wi-Fi wasn't working at the studio, so I'm swinging back from kid hockey. And next thing you know, Frank bombs and the siren goes off in here. We have the Frank bomb siren. And next thing you know, we've got a deal. What's your first reaction? Farabee and Frost to Calgary, Pelche, Kuzmenko, a 2nd and a 7th to Philadelphia.
I really like it from the Flames perspective. Look, I've watched Farabee and Frost quite closely here in Philly, and they're 2 really talented, creative players that I think were in desperate need of a change of scenery. I mean, even in a down year last year, Joel Farabee, 22 goals, 50 points, and he really kind of didn't even turn it on until the end. Morgan Frost is the center that I think Calgary's been looking for a little while. I think that they've had on and off conversations with the Philadelphia Flyers about Frost going back to September. And I think for both of these guys, whether it was in the same deal or separate deals, I'm just not sure that the longer John Tortorella stuck around in Philly, that there was a future for them and a place for them. So the Flyers ripped the Band-Aid off. The Flames add 45 to 50 goals and 90 plus points to their lineup with 2 guys that fit their age scheme. So look, it's not a perfect deal by any means, but I really don't think Calgary gave up very much here. Kuzmenko is a guy that was obviously moving on. Pelche, unfortunately for him, starting with the embarrassment from Darryl Sutter last year and then trying to find regular, consistent footing in this lineup, that's been hard to come by. And the 2nd-round pick, the money's kind of a wash. And yeah, you take on a little bit of a commitment in terms of Farabee moving forward, and Frost, well, you'll have to figure out. But from Calgary's perspective, a team desperate for offense.
Yeah.
I like it.
I was just going to say, I mean, we watch games here and they're getting goaltending. They don't take many nights off. They play with great structure, in my opinion. They just have a really tough time getting to 4 goals. They stall out at 3 a ton. And even 3 feels like a lot on some nights. I look at the last game against Washington. They're right there with the top team in the league, but they're just not finishing the chances they've created. They went and addressed arguably their greatest need, goal scoring. Now, they are pretty thin on the back end, especially without Kevin Ball. But does this mean Craig Conroy is in buy mode, or is this just didn't matter where they were in the standings? This is the type of deal he was going to look at all year anyway.
I think this is exactly the type of deal that he was looking at all year. I mean, how many times did you hear me say players that fit this team's age scheme?
Mm-hmm.
And people, every time I said it, it kind of felt like people's eyes were glazing over or exploding because people hear that and they say, oh, they must be buying big. They must be trying to, this is a hockey trade. I mean, that's ultimately what this is when it comes down to it. You're not buying rental pieces. You're buying pieces that are under team control. And again, is it perfect? In a perfect world, the Flames would have gotten a right shot center.
Yeah.
Okay. Frost is a left shot guy. But I think the creativity and talent that these two guys have, like, I was such a big believer in Joel Farabee a few years ago before the Flyers, or when the Flyers signed him to this long-term deal that he's on. I thought it was the perfect bet. And now I've watched, this team and the malaise that they've been in. Those two guys were lost and beaten down. So if you can find a way to get them excited, pump them up. And I think, just in conversations that I've already had in the last hour here with, sources close to the players, they're excited for a fresh start. They're looking forward to charting a new path. It's going to be real interesting. Farabee is obviously an American, but he's got some term. Frost is a Canadian. I'm just curious to see how these guys fit in for a team that could desperately use some kind of secondary scoring punch.
Frank, the question that I have looking at this deal from a Philadelphia standpoint, I get it a lot from Calgary, but what do you think the justification, the basis for this deal coming from the Philly side is? What do they see in guys like Pelche and Kuzmenko and what they can add to that team?
I think with Pelche, it's just opportunity. I think they see the numbers, they see his play at the AHL level. I mean, there's a point per game guy in the American League. They see a smaller guy that probably as Danny Briere is someone that needed a little bit of an opportunity himself in his career, probably see some of that as well. With Kuzmenko, it's a pure shot in the dark. It's, can we have a guy that has history playing with Matvei Michkov previously, reunite together and potentially take off? I mean, you guys know the backstory with Kuzmenko. A couple years ago, this guy, burst into the league, 1 goal away from 40 goals and 75 points as a rookie. And it was, jaw dropping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What we've seen from him, since he's arrived in Calgary has been the opposite of that. It's
this year.
Head scratching.
He was a half goal a game last year after the trade, and you're thinking, wow, like Conroy might be able to trade Kuzmenko in a year and turn that into a big trade tree, not unlike the Lindholm one. But it looked a lot more.
Actually.
This is one day before.
This is as good. Like, I was thinking when we were talking about Kuzmenko earlier in the year, I'm thinking the way his value is depressed with where he's at in their lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Could they get a 5th? Because
that's kind of where I was at. Yeah,
so.
it's just
the money that was left on his deal, and instead now you take it and you turn it into 2 real roster players that could really help your team. I couldn't imagine a better outcome for Craig Conroy and the Flames when trying to move Kuzmenko. And to think of it from the other perspective. So, like, again, let's just size up this whole thing. Pelche is not an everyday player this season. And Kuzmenko is a guy who you couldn't get out the door if you tried with a huge ticket. And then you only need to add a 2nd-round pick on top of that.
They have 2 this year. Yeah.
That's pretty good work. 2 in addition to the 3 first that you have.
Yeah, one will go to Montreal, but yes, they were sitting on 4 picks in the first 2 rounds. They're now down to 3, but they kept 2 first. We just don't know which ones it is yet. Jerseys plus another. The other part that you mentioned, I mean, Kuzmenko went from can't play under Tocchet to great finish here in Calgary, and then oh boy, the Flames are competing, and Ryan Huska is starting to see what Rick Tocchet saw. You can't trust this guy. He's in the press box. He's on the 4th line. He's getting benched for the 3rd period. Pelche cleared waivers earlier this year, Frank. So you're talking about a guy that we thought perhaps they could lose for nothing as a UFA, and a guy that anyone could have had for free back in October.
Yeah. So to answer Mike's question, what exactly are the Flyers looking at here?
Yeah,
they're cutting bait. They're getting flexibility. They're moving on from 2 players that weren't in their long-term future. They are getting cap flexibility, and they're going to try and rejig this puzzle and see what it looks like, because it was bound to happen at some point. Again, same transaction, separate transactions, whatever it might be. These 2 guys, they weren't long for Philly.
Yeah. And I will say this on the Kuzmenko-Pelche front, like Pelche has returned from the A and looked like an NHLer. He's played with energy. He's found his way onto the score sheet. Kuzmenko, whatever's shaken around in the last couple of weeks, has looked a lot more like the impactful, give a bleep meters, out of idle. But those are very small samples. And again, these are both assets you could have had for almost nothing at different points over the last 3-4 months. So
it's a masterclass in patience is what it is. I mean, how often have we been, every week we have this conversation on Barn Murder. Mm-hmm. What are the Flames going to do? How are they going to add? What is it? And like I said, I believe at least, if not before that the first conversation with the Flames and Flyers about Morgan Frost in particular was back in late September.
Wow.
So
before the season started.
Wow. It takes sometimes a while to break things down and to get to a point where everyone's happy.
Okay. Real quick. Do you have clarity on the details surrounding the picks? Do you know if they're both 2025s? Do you know if it's the Calgary 2nd rounder, or I believe what would be the Dallas 2nd rounder?
I don't have details on the picks just yet. In fact, the trade call has not yet been conducted, so it's not even official.
Okay.
This has, obviously evolved over a period of hours with players being yanked from the game, but this is, I'm told, 2nd and 7th. So.
Yeah, we've got your tweet right up there. Again, it is Pelche, Kuzmenko, a 2nd rounder and a 7th.
Yep.
As well
that's 3 first-round picks in the deal. So
that's right. Incredible.
It's a pretty sizable transaction. It really
is. Hey, thanks so much for hopping on with us. Congrats on breaking the deal. It's incredible when we start to hear whispers of this. And, I have an incredibly small Rolodex, unlike yourself, Frank, a world famous Rolodex. It's just crickets. So how you get answers from these people will text me back,
and some people don't. And sometimes, look, there's some people. I'll just tell you that were principals involved in the deal that I didn't hear back from, that I may or may not have sent a meme to tonight that just said, "You're killing me, Smalls." Look, sometimes you hear back, sometimes you don't. You just got to keep grinding by any means necessary.
Good for you.
Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it, man.
See you guys.
Thanks, Frank.
Our NHL Insider on the Crystal Waters Insider Hotline, I suppose. Why not? As the trade is official. We'll flash it back up one more time. Time left in the Flames game. Are we there yet?
I was just going to interject.
1 minute.
Matt Coronado has a natural hat trick.
Okay.
I was just going to say.
This is a positive day in Flames land.
It's I mean, I don't want to interrupt you and Frank going back and forth, but 3 straight. For Matty Coronado, up to 14 on the year. The Flames lead 4-1 with less than a minute to go.
We'll cut you a deal. I'm going to allow you to do a show where you can exclusively talk about tonight's game with Matt Coronado.
Wow.
In moments.
There you go.
If you want to hang for Afterburner, we're actually going to load up a different stream. I don't know if Jack can send a link in the comments or just head right back to the YouTube page. We'll have Afterburner with Cammie and Mike in probably just mere moments. There is the deal. Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost to Calgary. Farabee 24, 22 goals last year in what Frank called a down year. Not fits with Tortorella. The consensus on both these players, both around 6 feet, 185. Yep. Not huge, but both skill. Morgan Frost hasn't quite put it together offensively yet, but people really like the skill set. He's a center. They're both left shots. Frost and RFA this summer, making $2.1 million. Farabee is got 3 more years beyond this one at $5 million for the winger that impressed at the World Championships last year after getting out from under Torts. To the Flyers, 2019, I want to say first rounder,
That's
Jacob Pelche, who was just starting to carve out a role on this roster, but was available for nothing on waivers earlier this season. And the enigmatic Andrei Kuzmenko, who had quite a roller coaster tenure in both of his stops in the NHL prior to arriving in Philly. The 39-goal rookie season in Vancouver, followed by the steady benchings of Rick Tocchet, and a similar outcome here in Calgary, a half goal a game last year before working his way into fourth line and press box duty in Calgary.
We got some extra details. So the second round pick is this year. I'm not sure which one it is. This is Darren Dreger tweeting this out just now. I have no idea what the hell made this be negotiated in the deal, but the 7th round pick is in 2028.
Okay.
So
that's worth less than a ham sandwich. I might be dead by then. Yeah.
I don't know. That's something.
Okay. So a 2028 pick. That is the least valuable pick that's
ever been traded.
Moved. Yeah, probably. A 7th in 3 years.
And I will just remind you once again, Jacob Pelche was on waivers 3 months ago.
3 months ago. Kuzmenko expires in a few months.
And quite frankly, I think with Kuzmenko, if you would put him on waivers tomorrow, I don't know if he'd been claimed.
Not at that salary would be my
Brandon
guess.
Saad just cleared waivers. He's having a better year.
2nd and a 7th go to Philly in the deal as well. We'll wait for details on the picks. Thanks for joining us for the trade live stream. Thanks to the super chatters. And Jack, anything else we need to hammer up before we say goodbye?
Nope. Just get over to Afterburner.
All right. Watch for the links on our socials and hang around the YouTube. Cammie and Mike will break down Flames and Ducks in mere moments. Thanks for hanging with us tonight.